anything ready on your screen to share, or?
I don't. I can put.
Okay, okay. I can do that as well. All right, I'm sharing my screen now. All right, so you should be able now to see my screen with the Antrea milestone page. Perfect. So this is what we have at the moment in our payload for 0.0.20. These are the open issues. I will start with the easy part, assessing the closed issues. So let's review them to make sure we are good. So we have considered Kubernetes network policy are done, including the testing part that was missing. The bugs that we found around the egress network policies have been found. The anti-spoofing protection from unknown interface has been addressed. This problem with network policy span are being addressed too, and we managed to do the named ports, so it probably turned out to be easier than expected.
No, we don't support name ports.
That's right.
And so, and what
That
did
was
we fix here?
It's just that if there was a name port, then we were enforcing no policy at all and accepting all traffic. So,
and how did we fix this bug?
we just deny the traffic if we cannot.
Okay.
Yeah. And actually, for this one, I hope to share with you guys your opinion. How should we implement named port? But maybe you want to go through the issues before we talk about it.
Yeah, since let's close down first on 0.20. So basically, I did not review this PR. So basically, now if you specify a named port, whatever it's in that ingress rule, we deny it.
Right. We just
which means we don't implement it. We ignore the rule, and so we hit the default deny.
Right.
Okay, and I guess that we don't have yet any mechanism to report this back to the user, but maybe it's not a big deal because I guess in the next release we will support named ports. All right, and network policy and kind clusters. Then this one is a marked documentation bug. We already discussed it in the past meetings. The except field in network policy is not supported. This one has been implemented for sure, right? I remember having seen this. So this one has been implemented. Running Antrea agent of the host breaks. This was a sort of regression that Kobe found. Document an image for deploying Octant and the Antrea Octant plugin. We closed down one on this one. We already knew that this bug was going to be fixed. And the minimal ant-CTL is being merged. Perfect. Open issue.
That one is not merged, right? It's merged?
No, he closed it in favor of a new issue, which is 203. Yeah.
Okay, so I saw I'm sorry, in my screen, I swear I was seeing this one was purple, so I thought it was merged. No, it's red, you're right. So open issues. Ability to run Kubernetes conformance tests in an automated fashion. This doesn't need to be aligned with the release, right? But we want to make sure that we have it done before the release, perhaps?
Yes, the idea was that we would run the tests for the release, before the release. But there was progress made yesterday on this, so I need to check what's the exact status.
Perfect. And I think that the same applies also to the end-to-end network policy tests, running them as part of the CI, issue 93.
Yeah, it's pretty much the same issue. Yeah.
And regarding documentation for the OVS data path flows, what's the status?
Now that there was a bunch of in-flight PRs which were modifying the pipeline, so I postponed like updating my PR until all of them are merged, and now they're merged, so I can update my PR. So
all right, perfect. So, and I think that most of you have an opinion about what we should do with the CLI, right? So I guess that at this stage, since we want to release 0.2, we need to push that out to the next release.
Fine with that, yeah.
I don't think that we are close to merge it, like we can finish it in a couple of days, right? It's going to take more than that.
Well, there were two things. I mean, one is a bit my bad. I only did a review yesterday. I didn't have time to do it before. So that I think Weiqian is working on looking at my review comments. And the second thing is, even if we do merge this, even if we postpone the release and merge this, the only command we have right now is the version command. So it's not like super useful to the user. So
makes sense.
It shouldn't block the release. Yeah.
All right, so it makes sense. And I am not tracking anything else that should go into this release, at least from pull requests. I don't see anything that should be included in the release. Or is there anything that you think we should include?
Not from my side, but there are a few merged pull requests allowed tried by issues. For example, we are fixing a bug in monitoring CRD, so we can now remove the stale CRD. Originally, when you restart the agent, the CRD will be left forever.
Yeah,
and there's a small feature. You can say it's a feature like we start to support GRE and STT tunnels. That one got merged.
That one got merged too.
Yeah.
But the corresponding, sorry, I completely missed these PRs. So do they have corresponding issues that we can track to the release?
Sorry, I didn't create the issue for that one.
Okay. I saw this
mainly
one.
for IPsec because we found IPsec only works for GRE.
That's right.
So.
No. But I can write it down and I'll put it in the changelog for the release.
Yeah, that exactly. I was thinking for the changelog, we might want to have that. Yeah.
Yep.
So, okay. So if we could do that just to make sure that everything is included in the changelog, that would be great. Perfect. Yep. Said that, I think that we can, so to close down on 0.20, we need to review the latest merged PRs, ensure that we have an issue for all of them so that they will go into the changelog, push out the CLI to the next release, and then I guess that we will be done, right?
There's one more thing. Can we look at the current changelog and decide if we are changing some features from alpha to beta and from beta to GA?
Okay, yes. All right, so looking at the features in 0.10, I don't think, honestly, that we have enough feedback on Octant usage, on Octant integration, on the Octant plugin, sorry, to promote it to beta. I think that following the process that is adopted in upstream Kubernetes, before promoting a feature to beta, we will need to have some sort of feedback, right? To say, okay, this feature is being used. It's probably a little bit mature, and it can be released. I believe that Octant should still be alpha. So I don't know if you feel differently.
I concur with you on that.
Okay.
We sort of very limited information on this
option. We didn't hear you, Janjun. At least I didn't.
Oh, sorry. I'm just saying we sort of very limited information exposed to the Octant UI plugin. So I kind of agree it should be alpha.
All right. The monitoring CRDs, what is your feedback instead? Let's say that, of course, we don't have user feedback. I'm not expecting user feedback, but from our experience now, we have been using these CRDs for a couple of months now. Their structure is pretty much steady. So here, let's say that I am open to consider a promotion to beta for the monitoring CRDs, but promoting them to beta, would that require also us to do some changes to the API version, or do we keep it as it is? I don't think that we are encoding an alpha string in the API version at the moment, right? For the
I remember it's beta or something.
Is it already beta?
I mean the API group version, I think it's beta.
Yeah, if the API group is already version is already beta, then the CRD should be beta. The feature should be beta as well.
Sure. For the thing that this feature, in a sense, very small feature.
Yeah,
I'm not sure it's worth we it's beta or alpha.
I mean, it's just because we have to go through all the changelog. We will go through all the changelog. But in this case, I'm okay then to consider it beta.
Okay.
Okay, so we promote monitoring CRDs to beta, and for Kubernetes network policies, I know that we finished the implementation, but I don't know if we can call those a beta because we are still lacking named ports, and because we are just now integrating them into the CI in the end-to-end testing and running the conformance tests. Do we want to declare them beta now, or do we want to wait for another release?
We should not declare them beta until it passes conformance tests.
Okay, so Antonin, do you think that we will, I mean, we are not passing 100% of the conformance test because of the name port issue, so maybe we'll wait for that?
Yeah, I think Cody makes a good point,
okay.
So I'm fine with that.
All right. And so for this feature, supporting for configuring and cleaning up pod networking as for the CNI spec, VXLAN and Geneve tunnels are used for pod. I mean, this is a feature that just means the basic CNI functionality, right?
Yeah, but regarding that, I think we made quite a few changes to the OVS pipeline in this release. Nothing major, but because of those changes, I don't think we should
go
keep
GA.
it in beta. Yeah.
Okay, let's keep it in beta then. So let's say that consensus is to promote only the monitoring CRD to beta.
Sounds good.
Okay.
That was all for the release, I think, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. So is there anything else that we would like to add to the discussion regarding 0.2? I think that we should just probably finalize on the release date. Should we follow the mantra of never releasing anything on a Friday night? But in this case, I think it's okay.
Well, the plan was today, but I think we can do tomorrow probably.
I mean, I think that you just said that we need to. I mean, I was thinking that maybe tomorrow or Friday because you said that we want to do a little bit of admin things. Maybe it might take a few hours, but yes, if all we need to do is adjust the changelog and then do the release, yeah, we can do that even today. I don't think that we need to wait for other PRs to merge, right?
I think we should check with the testing, and maybe that we'll have to wait until people in China.
That's right. That's right. So let's wait until tomorrow. Let's wait until tomorrow.
I mean, that's why we aim for a Wednesday, so that we can be one day late and it's still not a Friday.
That's good. That's good. So so any last thing to discuss about 0.020? I think then we can move to the next topic, and Antonin suggested that we may want to start doing a bit of planning around 0.30. So any must-have feature in your view?
The CLI?
The CLI, of course. Okay, of course the CLI. Then anything else that we really need to have for 0.30? Among the features, because I noticed that in the past week there were a few activities in terms of enhancement proposals. So I saw that some were added from different people. The good thing is that some of them are not people that I know of, which means that where the project is starting to get some attention. And did you have a chance already to review the latest enhancement proposals that were added?
I look at some of them, but not all, I believe.
Okay, So which one did you look at?
I think it's one by Sue for low in type mode. I think for that one, there are two parts, right? One is for standard Antrea deployment in on-prem. Probably in some cases we don't do encapsulation. For example, when all the nodes are in the same subnet. In other case, I think he made that proposal also for the public cloud case, since we are talking to Microsoft to support Antrea in AKS, right? And then we want to do this policy only mode. I'm not sure it's must to have for 0.3 or not. But since we are talking to Microsoft, probably we want to make some progress. Maybe February or sometime we should have a version for that. And also for this one, I think we should look at that and then probably discuss what's the right interface to configure different modes. Since we already have multiple modes now, like overlay mode, IPsec encryption, and no encap, and the public cloud. So
it's a good point, and we probably need to allocate some thoughts to that and start working on it. The thing is that in terms of deliverables, I don't see this as something that can be coming for the next release. So this is more like a long-term activity.
It's hard to say. I mean, first, Sue sounds like he wants to be working on that. I'm not sure he can progress fast or not. And Orange, I also thought I probably can work on some encapsulation implementation. So, but I don't think it's very urgent. So, let's see.
Okay, so
in terms of no NCAP, is that really a priority that we want to put above other hardening tasks, and maybe push that out a little further?
I think it is a requirement for some public cloud providers.
Yeah.
Okay, which one specifically?
For now, we are mainly talking to Microsoft for AKS, right? And we want to go a model we do policy only. For the use Azure VNet network for connectivity.
Okay, so I guess the title of the issue is a little bit of a misnomer then, right? When you say no NCAP mode, what you mean really is no transit. You're just only doing policy. When I read that, I read that as changing the mechanism by which we would do transit.
Yeah, I'm also unclear about this. Is it really no transit, or is that just no IPAM?
You say, I think what you said is right. But when he made this proposal, I think he's thinking about two cases. They are similar, but not exactly the same. Now, one case that we do policy only. Another case, we do routing between nodes for cross-node traffic. They are similar in our sense. In both cases, we don't do overlay tunneling, so probably you can share some code and implementation. But you are right, they are not exactly the same.
Yeah, but they are not the same, but at least reading at the proposal, I don't see a reference to a policy-only mode. It seems like...
I guess in his pro, he used different term for that. I think there's no in-cap mask mode. It's policy only.
I see.
Okay.
Probably we can talk more details offline.
Sounds good.
Definitely something we should discuss.
Okay, let's take it offline, perhaps to the mailing list, which is a tool that we should start really using, and maybe we can flesh out a little bit more what we need to do there and figure out what could be a possible deliverable for 030. In terms of the enhancement proposals, did you have the chance of looking at this number 243, considering support annotations for open flows?
Yeah,
not yet.
I looked at it. It wasn't too clear. Basically, the request was to use annotations, which I think is a note action in OVS, to like annotate flows and make it easier to debug. but I mean, that's not a very detailed like feature request here. So
that is right.
So he said identify owner. So we already do that using cookies. We have a pending PRs, which is going to be merged soon, and there is a documentation PR which is going to be merged, which should make it easier to understand the flows. And the note action, it's not like in IP tables where you can add like a human readable string to your IP tables rule. The note action only supports like hexadecimal digits. It's more like a cookie extension. So yeah, basically, if you scroll down to the bottom, I ask for more information because
that's right.
Yeah.
Because yeah, go ahead, Junjun. You go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I just want to mention. I saw you assign this issue to Wen Ying. I think it's like Shu is interesting contributing to Antrea. I don't know how much time he will spend. We should encourage other contributors too. So
definitely, but then maybe it would help to have like a more fleshed out enhancement or proposal, and he can assign it to himself. So there's no.
Yep.
Okay, so we'll wait for more details because initially I thought that okay, it might be cool to annotate flows with the corresponding network policy UID in Kubernetes. That could be a nice idea, but the proposal itself, I mean, it's just a line, so it's easy to parse what it really means. It looked like it was advocating for a mechanism to expose in Antrea to annotate the underlying flows, which to me seems a little bit difficult to understand. But anyway, so we'll wait for an update from Shu, and we'll see what to do with this proposal. The other one that I wanted to talk to you about is this enhancement proposal from JE about Prometheus metrics for OVS performance and routes. So the JE has a very simple request to be able to integrate CNI performance over time with other dashboards in a KVS environment via Prometheus. So I know that Kobe has been looking into this as well. So maybe it might be nice to see what we can do in a way that we can roll this integration progressively and possibly deliver something, even just some tiny bit based on just from 0.3. So is this something that you deem it could be interesting for 0.3, or maybe this kind of integrations are it's probably still a little bit earlier for this kind of integrations, and we will still maybe more focus on the core functionalities?
So to me, it's like I'm not sure how we decided what the release. I was thinking if anyone is interested in implement anything, and if it can be ready by the release time, we can always include all the features, especially for external contributors. Or anyone want to work on something, at least there's no harm, then probably make some value. We can encourage them to.
Mm-hmm.
So the only issue I would bring up on this one is if we're talking about different implementations of the data path, like we just got off the phone, Mellanox is interested, right, in contributing, or other folks. Do we want to abstract out the taxonomy of like what types of metrics, like have a proposal that talks about what we want those metrics to look like, right? So there's a common API for metrics, no matter what the underlying source of those metrics are.
I agree on that. And indeed, from other conversations that we had in the various channels that we've been using, there are two things that are relevant to this kind of work. One are the metrics that we want to collect, defining a set of metrics that matter no matter what we are using in the backend. And the second is then defining the architecture for exporting these metrics in an efficient way, so that at the end of the day, then end up into Prometheus. And we can do this two discussions at the same time. It's not like we have to define the metrics before defining the architecture. In terms of metrics, if we look at typically what other CNI solutions, or generally speaking, other infrastructure software reporting to Prometheus, they generally report information about the runtime state of the system, which while you might usually think about, hey, let's report network performance statistics, let's report packet processing statistics, instead we usually find system health information. For instance, in the case of Antrea, that will be for each Antrea agent, information about, for instance, current resource usage or current event processing rate or any other sort of info that we can figure out. This is useful.
But still, as this is like a distributed environment, so okay, you want to show resource usage. Do you show it on the controller node pod or on each one of the nodes associated, etc.? We kind of, if we kind of want to gather information for everywhere, then we have to figure out what's the tool to use for this.
Okay, so which means that we cannot define metrics without defining architecture then. We cannot discuss the two things separately. We have to first define the architecture and then we discuss the metrics. Okay, so let's maybe let's see. From an architecture perspective, I don't know if we want to go into the deep dive discussion now, because I'm pretty sure that there are other topics that we want to discuss, but perhaps one thing that we might want to agree upon is whether we want to have Antrea controller to be a centralized collector of information, or have each agent separately report metrics. There are pros and cons in both approaches. I think, Kobe, that you have already looked at those, right, in the past?
Yeah, and from other implementation, like I think that Cilium uses like the centralized approach, while Calico using the distributed approach. Like each agent is reporting independently to Prometheus or whatever.
Mm-hmm. In the centralized approach, basically, perhaps Cilium, they have a sort of RPC interface between the agents and some centralized controller.
I kind of looked on how they reflect their statistics. I didn't look like on how they implement the data channel between agents and controller.
It seems that we could probably have both as well, right? Like for the underlying concrete implementation, right? That could be distributed, for example. But if we wanted to abstract an interface going northbound, right, to if we're doing like federation or something like that with, where those statistics are going to be all collected, that could be central per cluster or something like that. It's almost a tiered approach.
I see the point. I want to be honest. My only point is that I want to keep it as orthogonal as possible from Antrea development. Right. Basically, I don't want to have pieces of Antrea controller which are entirely devoted to collecting metrics from the agents. In my opinion, if we want to have a centralized controller, then we might want to have a dedicated piece of software, a dedicated container that maybe can run as a part of the Antrea controller deployment. But I don't want to add this as something that is part of Antrea controller, because I think Agreed. That, in my opinion, many will run the Prometheus integrations. Many other use cases, they will have something else to collect metrics, and maybe they won't give a damn about Prometheus. Anyway, so
good point.
I believe let's then now discuss how metrics will impact the architecture. And this is why I was making a difference between metrics that are about the health of the system and the metrics that are about the dynamics of the system. So
Salter, I have a question for you.
Yep.
So for the piece of code to connect the metrics on either agent and controller, you think that code should be inside the controller agent or should it be separate?
Do you say sorry? Do you say that if that code should be part of the controller agent or separate?
Yes.
Oh, you mean if that code should be part of the Antrea agent?
Yes.
I think you know, if we need the agent metrics, it's one thing. If we need OVS metrics, then it can be definitely separate. It could be something that reads from OVS and sends statistics to Prometheus. If we have to collect agent metrics instead, and therefore we need to get stuff that is only on the agent, it could be the agent itself. But another aspect, and this is I'm just thinking aloud because I've not validated this, is whether the monitoring CRD could be helpful in this case, because maybe the agent metrics are already there in the monitoring CRD, and that CRD can be already updated periodically, and so it will be just a matter of having something that exports that data into Prometheus.
So basically, you don't want to have any Prometheus client code?
I want to avoid. I want to make this writing as least. If we can manage to write 0 lines of code and have this working, it will be perfect. We cannot do that with 0 lines of code, of course. But I would like to keep the thing as orthogonal as possible, because at the end of the day, if we have already this information in the monitoring CRD, and we want to export the same information into Kubernetes, into Prometheus, sorry. Doing additional login into the agent, it feels like duplicating a little bit work, right?
Okay.
I don't know if you agree with this point. I don't know. Maybe.
I got what you mean. But my only question is I'm not sure the CRD can. I mean, if we want to expose too many stats, like per port or whatever from agent, then probably the CRD cannot be very efficient to populate all the stats.
That's right. I mean, it all depends on the nature of the metric. I think that this mechanism of exporting CRD data into Prometheus works if the data are pretty much static, like they are updated like with a frequency of minutes. If we are talking about data that gets updated with more frequently, like a few times
packet rates, those types of things, yeah.
That kind of things, yes, we completely need a different solution. And I've looked at a few Prometheus integration architectures, and the typical mechanism that we see where this data are pretty much posted, where pretty much Prometheus polls an API endpoint, they are still not going to fly a lot. If we have like 10 Antrea agents, maybe they can still work. If we have more than that, it can work, but we need to reduce the frequency at which Prometheus pulls the data. So it's all a matter of.
But for those expensive metrics, can't we have some kind of on-demand mechanism? Like something is wrong with an agent because of other metrics, and now you want to do a deep dive into this agent and like enable on that agent specifically metrics which can be expensive too.
And so you mean about going to troubleshooting? This is something that I don't know if Prometheus can do, because the way that I know, Kobe, correct me if I'm wrong, is that an agent exposes the metrics and it's just a single URI, and then Prometheus pulls all the metrics. Is that how it works?
Yeah.
Prometheus cannot say, agent X, give me metric Y because I'm interested in that specific metric.
Okay, that's good to know. Yeah, I thought there was a way to like have multiple. I mean, increase visibility.
There is not an official way of doing that, but we probably might be able to find something about that to drill down and sort of having a troubleshooting metrics when this happens.
So maybe the right approach is just concentrate on using Prometheus for the less dynamic data, and maybe for like debugging, suggest some other tool, or
no,
like
actually,
use CLI or whatever.
Actually, I will commit to, let's say, to using Prometheus for, let's say, static data that we define as static, and commit to that for 03 or 04, at least for to have something to get started. And then in the meanwhile, define, let's say, which metrics, rapidly changing metrics we would like to collect, and then see if Prometheus is still good, or if we need to implement some other collector. At the end of the day, we still want to push this data into Prometheus. What changes is the collection mechanism that we want to implement. And you know, this is in my opinion, because at the end of the day, users are not going to have 45 different dashboards. They probably have it's just a Grafana dashboard that is populated from that data collected by Prometheus. At the end of the day, the efficiency and the scale depends on how efficiently we can push this data into Prometheus. And another thing that I don't remember, and keep me honest here, it is the customer that it is the user that decides how frequently they want Prometheus to pull data. Is that right, Kobe? It's not like something that you code in your application. It's Prometheus.
I think so,
yeah.
Yeah,
so
it is polling. So
I think that's decided by your plugin, right? Pulling out a global configuration of the permissions, but your plugin should be able to configure what frequency you want to pull data.
I think that it's like a global.
Oh, really? I see.
So Prometheus. So maybe Kobe, can you talk a bit about the two operating modes that Prometheus has, because I don't really remember that.
Prometheus offers like two operation modes. One of them is where Prometheus is pulling the metrics from the app, from whatever the service. The other one is where Prometheus is running some listener, and the app is responsible to push the data towards Prometheus. They discourage using this.
So yeah, that's funny that Kobe was pointing me to the documentation where they pretty much wrote, yes, we have this, but don't use it.
Yeah.
All right, so let's agree that we will use it for collecting a sort of static, let's say static data, and we will start looking at the monitoring CRD for defining those metrics. And for those metrics, we will implement the interface where the agent exposes an endpoint. It could be the agent, the Antrea agent, or it could be something else. But maybe in this case, since it's very simple, it could be the Antrea agent, exposes an endpoint, and Prometheus then will be able to pull that endpoint to get the metrics it needs. The only problem here is how Prometheus discovers endpoints. Is that right, Kobe?
So that is configured per plugin, in my understanding.
The way that Calico does it is it uses an operator, right? There's an operator model where Prometheus is able to use the metadata of the daemon sets or the deployments, right, within Kubernetes to discover what the endpoints are available.
Okay, yeah, that's right. That's right. The operator, yeah, and Cilium also has the operator. That's a good idea. And Janjun, your question was that you were confused by the plugin model?
No, I saw the how to discover endpoints and how to pull data is decided by every plugin itself, and you can have different mechanisms. That is my understanding.
In this whole discussion, I think one key thing we need to separate, not only what's static and what's the dynamic state of the system, but also what we're good with receiving a sample of the data versus where we need every capture of the metrics data. A lot of the stuff that's been done with Prometheus and Calico is based on sampling, right? So the monitoring is a sampled frequency. So the scraping can be adjusted, based on scale, but you're still just getting a sampled view.
Yeah. I thought we can only do sampling. That is my understanding.
Correct.
And actually, before we decide we must use CRD, I kind of feel we should list all the metrics we want to support for 0.3 or even for the long term.
Yeah.
And then we decide what's the best mechanism for that.
I agree. So concretely, we've been talking about this for a while. What are the next steps that we want to do for this?
Next step for me is defining metrics that we want to collect in the short term, and definitely those metrics will be like, let's say, the static ones. In the meanwhile, review a solution for endpoint discovery possibly based on the operator model, where basically there would be another component, which is another pod, Antrea pod, which is like the Antrea operator. And this pod keeps track of all the Antrea bits that are running in the Kubernetes cluster, so that with something that I still don't know in Prometheus will be able to query this operator and know which are all the endpoints that it needs to pull and which metrics expect for each endpoint. And this should be our first step. The second step will be to consider a reliable framework for exporting extremely dynamic metrics. And this will complete, let's say, the metric export part. Then the cool thing, which could be a long-term shot, will be more about troubleshooting than metric collection, and it will be how to integrate all the other work that we are already planning around the OVS troubleshooting into the whole free ecosystem of observability and open tracing. This might or might not be feasible, so this is a very long shot at the moment. Let's say that for the time being, let's stick to the static metrics, and let's define a framework for making sure Prometheus can collect metrics from all the agents. And I don't know if there is anything else that we can plan for in the short term, but I reckon that this will be good enough.
And so are you going to drive that action item and reply to the issue opened by AJ, the one you're
Hobby
showing?
is going to drive that action item, I think, at least because at least for myself, I have a very bad week this week, and the next week I'll be off most of the week, which I think, Kobe, would you be happy about driving this?
Yeah, cool.
All right, perfect. And
I just want to make sure that we reply to that issue saying, I mean,
yes,
what we've discussed today. So if Kobe could do that.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Of course.
There is just another thing that I wanted to mention, but I managed also to forget what I was thinking about. So we can move to the next topic, I guess.
And I just wanted to propose adding like IPsec support in scope for the 0.3 release, because I think Janjun has done like a big chunk of the work already. So
this seems a good idea. Yes, definitely a good idea.
Yeah, I think we can have the change right there.
So, do we have, apart from what we have already discussed about the in-cap mods, do we have other work for making Antrea work in managed cloud frameworks like GKE, Azure, or whatever?
I think from Antrea perspective, it's mainly about its policy only mode. But we need some changing for different cloud, right? For example, AKS has its own repo. We need some changes there to deploy Antrea, and probably we'll only change the CNI plugin to do IPAM only. But
Perfect.
it's not probably not. Actually, we are not very sure yet. We still need to discuss with AKS guys and maybe GKE and EKS to see if we can find some common model to integrate Antrea into OS Cloud. That may require some change in Antrea core. But if we just follow the other thing in AKS, probably more change will be in the AKS repo to deploy and support Antrea to be a single option.
Okay. And John, is there anything from this proposal that I've opened on the screen? Do you think there could be anything from here that we could target to 0.3?
I'm not sure. I mean, I think it's something we taught for some time. Basically, we want to improve our troubleshooting story, especially if we can map some high-level abstraction to OpenWSwitch flows. Can be much easier for people who don't understand OpenWSwitch to troubleshoot and understand how we are doing networking. But I'm not sure who will be able to work on that. So.
That's right. Okay.
And even for, I think there are some other items we want to prioritize. For example, the Windows support.
Okay.
Some other items, but I don't know anyone will work on what yet.
Okay. So let's say that at the moment we can start creating an initial 0.3 payload with CLI, named policy support, named port support for network policies, and then we'll put something for Prometheus in scope and the IPsec tunnel feature. So this will be the initial payload for 0.3. Antonin, did I forgot anything?
No, that sounds good. I'm also kind of volunteering to take care of one issue we have open for 0.3, which is the fact that when you delete Antrea from a cluster, it doesn't clean up properly.
Okay, after itself. Okay,
yeah,
good.
that is very useful, I believe.
Perfect. So we'll add that to the list too. And so I guess that this concludes the discussion around 0.3. We have 10 minutes left in the meeting, and I just would like to know from the attendees if there is any bug that deserves discussion, or if everything is under control. I didn't see any high-profile discussion around bugs, so I guess there's nothing that needs to be discussed, but I just wanted your feedback too.
I didn't know any critical bug. But I mentioned probably we can discuss a little about named port. Yeah.
Okay.
So do you want to talk about it?
Yeah, let's talk about the named
Maybe
port.
we can hear Abhishek. I don't know, because we said we would put it in scope for
yeah,
0.3.
Abhishek, I think Abhishek joined.
Yes. Abhishek, maybe you can talk.
Okay, yeah. So I wanted to ask about the name port. Is that today what we do, or rather, sorry, the support that if you want to have a name port in network policy, and there are multiple pods which are backing the same name port, but by different port numbers, the support for that will be a large effort, and also require some changes in our grouping. I have some proposals. I will send out an email on that one. The other thing that Junjun and I offline discussed about this was like to maybe first start with a support in which the name port resolved to a single port number. So that would be like that can be done within a week. And I also noticed that the Kubernetes end-to-end network policy conformance tests, they also test it in the same way. That is, they create policies with name port and pods which expose that port on a single port. So that way we would be able to pass that, but definitely I don't know whether it's how commonly it is used, this name port, and is this how they use it? So some feedback on this would be appreciated.
Great. My opinion is that if we implement this format with a single port, and it can be done in a week, and that's fine. But then if we have to rewrite everything for supporting the full feature, then maybe it's not the case. So if you have already some proposals for the design, maybe let's discuss them over the mailing list. Perhaps some member from the community might step up also to help with the implementation and review. perhaps, hopefully, and which, you know, it will be great. Honestly, I don't want, I'm not super keen in implementing a solution that is just good enough for passing the conformance test. The reason is that we don't know how users are going to use it. And what we know from our experience is that users have this little habit of using your software exactly in the way that you were not expecting to.
I'm with Salvatore on this, because it's not like we have a pressing feature request of someone saying, I really need to use name port in this way, the simple way. So we're not under any pressure to support that. So I think we should.
I kind of agree with what you said, but I'm not sure about we will have a pressure or not. That one we can discuss offline. But
okay,
maybe we'll have some pressure to pass network policy pass to get into some products. So that's my only reason to have a quick solution.
Okay. So you think if we need to, it's important for Antrea to get the badge of the conformance test, then it might be worth an effort that
right.
even if we have to throw it away. That's a good point. If that badge is important, yes.
We should have a discussion on this on GitHub about this. So somebody should open it.
I mean, GitHub or the mailing list, whatever you want, it's perfect. That's fine.
To basically justify doing that.
But for the time being, I will keep these support for the network policy for named ports absolutely targeted for 0.3. It seems that it makes sense to keep it targeted. All right, so 5 minutes to go. Open discussion. Anything you would like to bring up?
I just wanted to update everyone that we are in the process of getting the final templates for the website put together, and we'll have the team take a vote and get your feedback on what you think about the designs. So I'll be looking for that soon.
Okay, and the other open discussion topic of my side is whether anyone had a look at documentation and generating it with Jekyll, so that then maybe once we have the website, we publish it there.
So on the website, it is going to be based on Jekyll, and I think that we can have the markdown translated into, basically have the documentation pulled from the GitHub, right? So I actually brought that up and was pretty adamant that we only have one style of markdown, right, that we are going to support for the documentation. That way it's the same if you're looking at it from the repo or from the website. And so what we'll do is just set up an import capability, right, to bring it into the formatting of the website if users want to look at the documentation that way.
And awesome. we may, regarding what we discussed last time as well, we may want to start having version folders for the markdown documentation.
Absolutely. So there will be a build and release process, right, for the website. I mean, it's a statically generated site using Jekyll, and so as we release different versions of the website, we'll want to make sure to be able to toggle a collection of docs that were related to a particular tag or
okay, I guess that's what my question was, because I've seen that in some projects on GitHub, they have multiple folders inside of the GitHub repository with v1.1, v1.2, v1.3. But if we build the website statically when we do an Antrea release and you import the documentation at that point, then I guess we don't really need to do that, because you would just look at the documentation.
What's your preference? I think maintaining multiple versions of documentation, the only issue is if we have fixes that we backport, right, then we would have to have a mechanism to handle a backport of documentation, especially for long for LTS type versions.
In my opinion, maybe this is naive, but in my opinion, it is impossible to assume that we will never have to backport documentation patches. Imagine a typo, we find a typo, we want to backport the typo to all the versions. If we can avoid the overhead of having multiple versions and having to handle multiple versions, at least until we get to 1.0, I don't know. I would rather avoid having that.
Okay. So no plan to version it directly into the GitHub.
And speaking of typo, my recollection with Jekyll is that typos are the most irritating thing, because you find a typo and then you rebuild. You publish, you find another typo, and then you rebuild, and you can spend days doing this. It's just let's have also a process for doing a spell check before publishing.
And we'll want to make sure to automate that rebuild, right?
So that
we don't have somebody wasting their time rebuilding the site.
That's right. Perfect. All right. So I guess that this concludes also our conversation on documentation. Anything else to bring up?
I missed the date for the 0.3. Did we decide on a tentative date or timeline?
Not yet. Not yet. I deliberately did not decide it, because I think that maybe we might want to have, we need to take into account also the holiday break. So I was thinking that maybe in the next few days, there will be very little activity, as I believe that next week, at least in the Western Hemisphere, most people will be off. So maybe we can set a date after Christmas, perhaps, if that's okay for you. Otherwise, we can try a tentative date now.
No.
Usually we would say like every 4 weeks, so that would be January 15th. I don't know if we want to postpone it to the end of January because of the Christmas break.
I believe that maybe we can do January 20. Let's set tentatively for January 22nd, I will say. Okay. And then maybe after Christmas, we can decide whether this date is still okay or whether we want to push it out a little. All right.
When would be our next meeting?
That due to the holidays, the next couple of meetings would not take
Yes, that was going to be my parting communication. So
sorry.
I'm sorry. So next week, I think everyone except Kobe will be off, and instead, and therefore will cancel the meeting of Wednesday, December 25th. And the other Wednesday, which is January 1st, I think it's the only day in the year where everybody except North Korea doesn't work. So we'll take off that other one.
The North Korea developer community resent your statement.
Yes, unfortunately, they could not have heard my statement.
The only reason they're not joining the meeting is because of proxy issues and lack of internet access.
That's right. That's right. Okay, so I guess that is all for today, and have a good day, a good afternoon, good evening, or good night.
Yeah. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.